Maya Chen sat in the back corner of her chemistry class, hunched over her notebook as she scribbled equations with mechanical precision. At 17, she looked like any other high school student struggling through advanced placement courses. Her black hair fell in messy waves around her face, hiding the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of countless sleepless nights. She wore the same faded jeans and oversized hoodie every day, as if trying to disappear into the fabric itself. "Miss Chen, perhaps you'd like to share your answer with the class?" Mr. Patterson's voice cut through her concentration like a blade. Maya's head snapped up, revealing eyes that seemed far older than her teenage years. For just a moment, something cold and calculating flashed across her features before she quickly looked down again. I don't know the answer," she mumbled, though her notebook clearly showed the correct molecular structure drawn with expert precision. The other students snickered. To them, Maya was just the weird, quiet girl who never spoke up, never joined clubs, and ate lunch alone in the library. They had no idea that the trembling hands now gripping her pencil had once commanded fleets of starships across 3 galaxy sectors. As the bell rang, Maya gathered her things quickly and headed for her locker. The hallway buzzed with typical teenage chatter about weekend plans and upcoming dances. She moved through it all like a ghost, her mind elsewhere entirely. Sometimes she would catch herself calculating the structural weak points of the school building or mentally mapping escape routes from every room. Old habits died hard, especially when those habits had kept entire civilizations alive. "Hey, freak!" The voice belonged to Derek Holbrook, the school's star quarterback who seemed to take personal pleasure in making Maya's life miserable. He stepped into her path with his usual gang of followers, blocking her route to her next class. "My little sister says you never talk in her English class either. What's wrong with you? Cat got your tongue?" Maya kept her eyes fixed on the floor. These children had no idea they were taunting someone who had once negotiated the surrender of the Krillian Empire with nothing but words and an ice-cold stare. She could break Derek's arm in 7 different ways before he could blink, but that girl, that terrifying, efficient killer, was supposed to be dead and buried. "I'm talking to you!" Derek grabbed her shoulder roughly, spinning her around. The moment his hand made contact, Maya's body moved on pure instinct. Her free hand shot up toward Derek's throat, stopping just millimeters from crushing his windpipe. Time seemed frozen as she stared into his suddenly terrified eyes, seeing not a teenage bully but an enemy soldier who needed to be neutralized. Her fingers twitched, muscle memory from 1,000 battles screaming at her to complete the strike. But then Derek's face came back into focus, young and stupid and utterly human, and Maya jerked her hand back like she'd been burned. She stumbled backward, her breathing coming in sharp gasps as the hallway spun around her. "What the hell was that?" Derek stepped back, his voice shaky. Even his friends looked unsettled by the brief glimpse of something predatory they'd seen in Maya's eyes. Maya didn't answer. She couldn't trust her voice not to slip into the command tone that had once brought alien warlords to their knees. Instead, she turned and ran, pushing through the crowd of students who quickly moved out of her way. She found herself in the abandoned music room on the 3rd floor, a place where broken instruments went to gather dust. Maya collapsed onto an old piano bench, her whole body shaking as memories she'd tried so hard to suppress came flooding back. The first time she'd killed someone, she'd been only 14. It was during the siege of Arcturus Station, when the alien coalition forces had broken through the human defense lines. She'd been just another refugee child hiding in the maintenance tunnels when the enemy soldiers found her family's hiding spot. Her parents had died trying to protect her, and something inside Maya had simply broken. Or perhaps it had been born. The alien soldier who'd murdered her family never saw the makeshift blade coming. Maya had moved with a precision that shouldn't have been possible for someone her age, striking with lethal accuracy at the creature's vulnerable nerve cluster. As the alien collapsed, dying, Maya had felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Word of the incident had reached Colonel Sarah Martinez, a decorated human military officer who was recruiting for a classified program. Martinez had found Maya sitting beside her parents' bodies, covered in alien blood, her young face already showing the 1,000-yard stare of a seasoned killer. "What's your name, kid?" Martinez had asked gently. "Maya Chen," she'd whispered, her voice already beginning to lose its childlike quality. "How old are you, Maya?" 14. Martinez had knelt down beside her, studying the girl's face with the eye of someone who recognized potential when she saw it. "Would you like to make sure this never happens to another human family?" And just like that, Maya Chen, the refugee child, had died, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. The Terran Special Operations Division had trained her, shaped her, and turned her into their most effective weapon against the alien threats that seemed to pour from every corner of the galaxy. By 16, she'd been leading her own strike teams against enemy installations. By 17, she'd assassinated 3 alien warlords and crippled the supply lines of 2 different enemy fleets. By 18, she'd orchestrated the fall of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, an economic empire that had controlled half the known galaxy for over 2 centuries. They'd called her the Ghost of Terra, whispered her name in a dozen alien languages as a warning to anyone who threatened human space. Maya Chen had become a legend, a nightmare story that enemy mothers told their children to keep them in line. But legends always came with a price. The door to the music room creaked open, startling Maya from her memories. She looked up to see Mrs. Henderson, the school counselor, standing in the doorway with a concerned expression. "Maya? I heard there was an incident in the hallway. Are you all right?" Maya quickly wiped her eyes, not realizing she'd been crying. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the same lie she'd been telling for 3 years. Mrs. Henderson stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She was a kind woman in her 50s, with graying hair and the patient manner of someone who'd spent decades trying to understand troubled teenagers. "You know, Maya, I've been watching you since you enrolled here. You're clearly brilliant, your test scores are off the charts, but you never seem to connect with anyone. You always look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." If only she knew, Maya thought bitterly. The weight wasn't just the world, it was entire star systems. "I don't really fit in here," Maya said quietly, which was perhaps the most honest thing she'd said in years. "Where do you fit in?" Mrs. Henderson asked, settling herself on another dusty bench. Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Hands that had once been steady enough to disarm a fusion bomb while under enemy fire, hands that had signed peace treaties and death warrants with equal efficiency. Now they just looked like any other teenager's hands, but Maya could still feel the phantom weight of all the weapons they'd held. "Nowhere," she finally whispered. "I don't fit in anywhere anymore." Mrs. Henderson leaned forward slightly. "Maya, I know you've been through something traumatic. Your records from before you enrolled here are mostly classified, which tells me you were probably in some kind of witness protection or military family situation. Whatever happened to you, whatever you've seen or been through, it doesn't define who you have to be now." But that was where Mrs. Henderson was wrong. What Maya had done, what she had become, it did define her. She wasn't some traumatized victim who could be healed with therapy and time. She was a weapon that had been temporarily deactivated, hidden away in the most mundane place possible while the galaxy moved on without her. The irony wasn't lost on her. Maya Chen, the girl who had brought down governments and redefined the balance of power across 3 sectors of space, was now being defeated by high school algebra and teenage bullies. "I should get to my next class," Maya said, standing up from the bench. "Maya, wait." Mrs. Henderson stood as well, her expression earnest. "There's something I want you to consider." We're starting a peer tutoring program, pairing advanced students with younger kids who are struggling. I think it might be good for you to have some positive interaction with others." The suggestion hit Maya like a physical blow. The idea of being responsible for children again, of having their safety and well-being in her hands, made her stomach clench with panic. She'd failed so many people already. Every mission that had gone wrong, every civilian casualty, every soldier who died following her orders, they all haunted her dreams. "I can't," Maya said quickly, backing toward the door. "I'm not good with people. I'm not good with responsibility." "Maya, you're selling yourself short. I've seen your work. I've seen how carefully you think through every problem. You have natural leadership qualities that you're just not recognizing." Leadership qualities. If Mrs. Henderson only knew that Maya had once commanded a fleet of 47 ships in the battle for the Kepler system, coordinating the movements of over 30,000 personnel while dodging enemy fire from 6 different directions. She'd been 19 years old at the time, and her tactical brilliance had saved 3 human colonies from annihilation. But that same tactical brilliance had also gotten 12 of her ships destroyed when she'd miscalculated the enemy's retreat pattern. 436 souls, all dead because the legendary Ghost of Terra had made one small error in judgment. "I have to go," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She fled the music room, leaving Mrs. Henderson standing alone among the broken instruments and dusty sheet music. Maya's footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as she ran, but she couldn't outrun the memories that followed her like shadows. In her rush to escape, Maya didn't notice the small device that fell from her backpack, skittering across the floor to land beneath a row of lockers. It was innocuous looking, like a broken piece of electronic equipment that any teenager might carry. But if anyone had been trained to recognize advanced alien technology, they would have known immediately that the device was a quantum communicator, designed to work across interstellar distances, and if anyone had been monitoring the right frequencies, they would have detected the brief signal that the device had been broadcasting for the past 3 years. A signal that said, in the mathematical language of the stars, "Ghost of Terra located. Ready for extraction." Maya made it to the bathroom before the panic attack hit her full force. She locked herself in a stall and slumped against the wall, her whole body shaking as she struggled to breathe. This was her life now, she reminded herself. This was what normal was supposed to look like. No more battlefields, no more impossible decisions, no more watching good people die because of her orders. But as she sat there, gasping for air in a high school bathroom stall, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her peaceful exile was about to come to a violent end. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in the part of her that would always be the Ghost of Terra, she found herself analyzing the school's defensive positions and counting how many innocent lives she would have to protect when her past finally caught up with her. Because deep down, Maya knew the truth that Mrs. Henderson couldn't understand. Some weapons could never truly be retired. They could only be temporarily stored, waiting for the day when the galaxy would need them again. That day, Maya realized with growing dread, might be coming sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the device fell from Maya's backpack, the first sign of trouble appeared in her trigonometry class. Maya was mechanically working through equations when the fire alarm began blaring throughout Jefferson High School. Students around her groaned and began gathering their things for what they assumed was another routine drill, but Maya's blood turned to ice. She knew the difference between a scheduled drill and an emergency evacuation, and more importantly, she could hear something in the alarm pattern that made her combat instincts scream warnings. The rhythm was wrong, too urgent, and underneath the electronic wailing, she could detect the faint whine of energy weapons charging. "Everyone remain calm and exit through the nearest doorway," announced their teacher, Mr. Kowalski, but Maya was already moving. While the other students shuffled toward the main exit, Maya ducked low and made her way to the windows. What she saw in the parking lot made her stomach drop. Black unmarked vehicles surrounded the school, their sleek design too advanced for any Earth military she knew. Figures in tactical armor were deploying from the vehicles with the precise movements of elite soldiers. But these weren't human soldiers. Even from a distance, Maya could see the telltale signs of Zarani shock troops, their elongated limbs and distinctive helmet designs unmistakable to someone who'd fought them across half the galaxy. "They found me," Maya whispered, her mind immediately shifting into tactical mode. But how? She'd been so careful, so perfectly ordinary for 3 years. Unless... the communicator. The device that had fallen from her bag must have been transmitting her location all this time. But that meant someone had been tracking her since she'd arrived on Earth, waiting for the right moment to strike. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of energy weapons discharging somewhere in the school's main corridor. Students in her classroom began to panic as the reality of the situation hit them. This wasn't a drill, and those weren't human security forces outside. "Everyone get down!" Maya shouted, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command. The students, including Mr. Kowalski, immediately dropped to the floor without question. "Stay away from the windows and doors." Maya's mind raced as she assessed their situation. They were on the second floor of the East Wing. Approximately 40 students and 1 teacher under her protection. The Zarani would be sweeping the building systematically, looking for her while considering everyone else expendable obstacles. She had perhaps 10 minutes before they reached this section of the school. "Mr. Kowalski," Maya called out, crawling over to where the teacher lay pressed against the floor. "Do you have access to the school's PA system from your classroom computer?" "What? Yes, but Maya, what's happening? Who are those people?" "They're here for me," Maya said simply, her voice taking on the cold, clinical tone that had once struck fear into alien warlords. "And they will kill everyone in this school to get to me unless I give them what they want." The transformation in Maya was visible and immediate. Gone was the nervous, withdrawn teenager who'd been terrorized by high school bullies. In her place was someone harder, older, infinitely more dangerous. Her posture straightened, her movements became fluid and precise, and her eyes took on the calculating stare of a predator. "I need you to access the PA system and announce a code red lockdown," Maya continued. "Tell everyone to barricade themselves in their classrooms and stay away from windows. Can you do that?" Mr. Kowalski nodded, still stunned by the complete change in his quiet student. He crawled to his desk and began typing on his computer with shaking hands. Maya turned her attention to the students, most of whom were staring at her with a mixture of fear and confusion. Among them was Derek Holbrook, the quarterback who'd bullied her just days ago. Now he looked young and terrified, all his teenage bravado stripped away by the sound of combat echoing through the school. "Listen carefully," Maya said, her voice carrying easily across the room, despite being barely above a whisper. "I'm going to get you out of this, but I need you to follow my instructions exactly. No questions, no arguments. Your lives depend on it." Sarah Kim, one of the honor students, raised a trembling hand. "Maya, what's happening? Who are you?" Maya was quiet for a moment, studying the faces around her. These children, her classmates, were about to learn that their quiet, weird classmate was someone entirely different than they'd believed. Someone whose very existence put them in mortal danger. "My real name is Maya Chen," she said finally, "but for the past few years I was known by another name. They called me the Ghost of Terra." The name meant nothing to most of them, but Maya could see recognition dawn in Mr. Kowalski's eyes. He'd been old enough to remember the war reports, the whispered stories of the human operative who'd single-handedly turned the tide of the galactic conflict. "That's impossible," Derek said, his voice cracking. "You're just some weird kid who doesn't talk to anyone." 3 years ago, I destroyed the Zorani military command structure and forced their government to sign a peace treaty, Maya replied matter-of-factly. I was 18 years old. The beings attacking this school right now are Zorani extremists who want revenge for what I did to their empire. The room fell silent, except for the distant sounds of energy weapons and what might have been screaming from somewhere else in the building. Mr. Kowalski finished his announcement, and Maya could hear his amplified voice echoing through the school's corridors, warning students and teachers to lock down and hide. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" asked Jessica Martinez, a girl Maya had occasionally sat near in the cafeteria. "Why didn't you warn us?" "Because I thought I was done," Maya said, moving to the classroom door and listening intently to the sounds in the hallway. "I thought I could just be a normal teenager and leave all of that behind. I was wrong." She could hear them now, the distinctive clicking footsteps of Zorani soldiers moving through the school in tactical formation. They were being methodical, clearing each room as they advanced. Maya estimated she had perhaps 5 minutes before they reached this classroom. "Mr. Kowalski, is there another way out of this room?" "Maintenance access, old dumbwaiter, anything?" "There's a utility closet that connects to the maintenance tunnels," the teacher said, pointing to a door Maya had never noticed. "But Maya, those are your people out there, aren't they? Can't you just surrender? Tell them to leave the school alone?" Maya's laugh was bitter and entirely without humor. "Those aren't my people, Mr. Kowalski. They're Zorani extremists, which means they view all humans as acceptable casualties. If I surrender, they'll kill everyone in this school anyway just to send a message." She moved to the utility closet and examined the door. It was unlocked, revealing a cramped space filled with cleaning supplies and a narrow access panel that led to the building's maintenance systems. "The tunnels will take us to the basement," Maya continued, her mind automatically mapping escape routes and defensive positions. "From there, we can reach the emergency exits on the building's north side, away from their main force." "What about everyone else?" Sarah asked. "What about the other students?" Maya paused, her hand on the access panel. It was the question she'd been dreading, the one that cut right to the heart of why she'd tried so hard to become someone else. Because the truth was, she couldn't save everyone. She never could. That was the burden of command, the weight that had driven her from the stars to this small-town high school. "I can't save everyone," Maya said quietly. "I can only save the people in this room, and only if we move right now." But even as she said it, Maya knew she was lying. She could hear other students trapped throughout the school, their voices carrying through the ventilation system. Children who'd never done anything more dangerous than skip class or cheat on a test, now facing alien soldiers who wouldn't hesitate to kill them all. "No," Maya said suddenly, her voice firm with decision. "No, we're not running." She turned away from the escape route and began examining the classroom's layout with new eyes, not as a place to flee from, but as a position to defend. "Maya, what are you doing?" Mr. Kowalski asked nervously. "What I should have done 3 years ago," Maya replied, her transformation now complete. She was no longer a tormented teenager trying to hide from her past. She was the ghost of Terra, and she was exactly where she needed to be. Maya began moving desks with systematic efficiency, creating defensive barriers and clear lines of sight. Her hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory taking over as she prepared the classroom for combat. "I need weapons," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "Mr. Kowalski, do you have any chemical supplies? Anything that could be used to create incendiary devices?" "Maya, you can't seriously be thinking of fighting those soldiers," Derek said, but his voice carried more awe than disbelief now. "I've been fighting soldiers like them since I was 14 years old," Maya replied, examining the contents of a supply cabinet. "The difference is, back then I had proper equipment. Now I have cleaning supplies and chemistry lab materials." She began combining chemicals with the same precision she'd once used to arm fusion bombs, creating small explosive devices from everyday school supplies. The students watched in fascinated terror as their quiet classmate demonstrated skills that shouldn't have existed outside of military special forces. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked. "You said yourself you can't save everyone." Maya paused in her work, holding an improvised explosive device that could take down an armored Zorani soldier. For a moment, her mask slipped, and the students could see the exhausted, haunted girl beneath the legend. "Because 3 years ago I failed to save 436 people under my command," Maya said quietly. "And every day since then I've wondered if I could have done something different, something better. Today, I get to find out." The sound of energy weapons was getting closer now, accompanied by the distinctive electronic chatter of Zorani communication devices. Maya could hear them moving through the corridor just outside their door, searching each room with methodical thoroughness. "Everyone get behind the desk barriers," Maya ordered, checking her improvised weapons one final time. "Stay low, stay quiet, and no matter what happens, don't try to help me. I work better alone." "Maya," Mr. Kowalski said urgently, "there has to be another way. You're just a kid." Maya looked at him with eyes that held the weight of star systems, the cold certainty of someone who'd made impossible decisions and lived with their consequences. "No, Mr. Kowalski," she said, taking position by the door with weapons in both hands. "I haven't been a kid for a very long time." The footsteps stopped outside their door. Maya could hear the soft electronic whining of an energy weapon charging, could sense the alien soldiers on the other side preparing to breach the classroom. For the first time in 3 years, Maya Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and debris, and the ghost of Terra went to work. The first Zorani soldier through the door never saw Maya coming. She moved like liquid shadow, slipping past his weapon's firing arc and driving her improvised explosive device directly into the weak point, where his armor connected at the shoulder joint. The detonation was small but precise, sending feedback through his entire suit system and dropping him unconscious before he could raise an alarm. The second soldier managed to get off one energy blast that scorched the wall where Maya had been standing a microsecond earlier. She rolled behind a desk, came up with a chemical mixture she'd prepared, and threw it with perfect accuracy at the alien's helmet visor. The acidic compound began eating through the reinforced material immediately, forcing the soldier to claw at his faceplate while Maya closed the distance between them. One precise strike to the creature's nerve cluster, and the second soldier joined his companion on the floor. The entire engagement had lasted less than 15 seconds, and Maya hadn't made a sound louder than a whisper. The students behind the desk barriers stared at her in stunned silence. This wasn't the quiet, withdrawn girl who sat in the back of their classes. This was something else entirely, something dangerous and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. "How did you—" Derek started to ask, but Maya held up a hand for silence. She was listening to the tactical chatter coming from the fallen soldiers' communication devices, her face grim as she processed the information. 37 Zorani soldiers in the building," she murmured, more to herself than to her classmates. "Sweep pattern indicates they're working from the ground up, clearing each floor systematically. Command post established in the main parking lot with air support on standby." Maya quickly stripped the soldiers of their equipment, examining each piece with professional efficiency. The weapons were familiar to her, though these were newer models than what she'd faced during the war. The armor was lighter but more advanced, incorporating stealth technology that made the wearers nearly invisible to human detection methods. "Maya," Mr. Kowalski whispered urgently, "more of them will come looking when these two don't report in." "I know," Maya replied, configuring one of the captured energy weapons for human use. "That's why we're not staying here." She moved to the classroom's windows and studied the tactical situation outside. The Zorani had positioned themselves well, with overlapping fields of fire and clear sight lines to all the building's normal exits. But Maya could see weaknesses in their deployment, small gaps that someone with the right training could exploit. Someone like the ghost of Terra. "Here's what's going to happen," Maya said, turning back to the students. "I'm going to create a distraction that will draw their attention to the east side of the building. When that happens, you're all going to use the maintenance tunnels to reach the north exit. Mr. Kowalski knows the way." "What about you?" Sarah asked, though from the expression on her face, she already suspected the answer. "I'm going to make sure they follow me instead of you," Maya replied simply. "That's suicide," Derek protested, and Maya was surprised to hear genuine concern in the quarterback's voice. "There are too many of them, even for someone like you." Maya's smile was cold and predatory. "Derek, 3 years ago, I took down an entire Zorani battle fleet with nothing but a modified cargo shuttle and a very bad attitude. 37 ground troops is actually quite manageable." She began setting up her improvised weapons throughout the classroom, creating a complex series of timed charges and chemical reactions that would turn the room into a death trap for anyone who entered after they left. "I don't understand," Jessica said quietly. "If you're really this famous ghost person, why were you hiding? Why didn't you fight back when we were mean to you?" Maya paused in her work, considering the question. How could she explain to a 17-year-old girl that sometimes the hardest battles weren't against alien armies or galactic empires, but against the voices in your own head that whispered you were a monster? "Because I thought if I could just be normal, just be a regular teenager, maybe I could forget what I'd done," Maya said finally. "Maybe I could convince myself that I was more than just a weapon that humans had created to fight their wars." "And now?" Mr. Kowalski asked gently. Maya checked her captured equipment one final time, her movements precise and economical. "Now I remember that sometimes being a weapon is exactly what innocent people need." The sound of footsteps in the corridor was getting closer. Maya could hear the distinctive click hiss of Zorani speech as they coordinated their search pattern. She estimated perhaps 2 minutes before they reached this classroom and discovered their missing soldiers. "Time to go," Maya announced. "Remember, wait for my signal before you move. I'll draw them away from your escape route." But as the students began moving toward the utility closet, Maya heard something that made her blood freeze. Over the Zorani communication channels, she could detect new voices, and these weren't speaking the harsh alien language she knew so well. These voices were speaking human standard, with the crisp precision of military professionals. "Impossible," Maya whispered. But even as she said it, pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. The tracking device in her backpack, the precision timing of the attack, the fact that the Zorani had known exactly where to find her after 3 years of perfect hiding. She'd been betrayed by humans. "Maya, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, noticing the change in her expression. "Change of plans," Maya said grimly. "The Zorani aren't working alone. They have human collaborators, which means our escape routes may already be compromised." The implications hit her like a physical blow. If humans were working with the Zorani extremists, it could only be for one reason. Someone wanted the ghost of Terra alive, and they were willing to sacrifice an entire school full of children to get her. But who? And why? The answer came to her with sickening certainty. Colonel Sarah Martinez, the woman who'd recruited Maya all those years ago, who'd turned a traumatized refugee child into the galaxy's most efficient killer. Martinez had always seen Maya as her greatest creation, her perfect weapon. And now, apparently, she wanted her weapon back. "Everyone stay here," Maya ordered, moving toward the door with deadly purpose. "I need to gather more intelligence before we move." "Maya, no!" Derek called out, but she was already gone, slipping into the corridor like a shadow. Maya moved through the school's hallways with ghostly silence, her captured Zerani equipment allowing her to monitor their communications while staying invisible to their detection systems. What she heard confirmed her worst suspicions. "Ghost is contained on second floor," a human voice reported. "Maintain perimeter, but do not engage directly. Orders are to take the asset alive." "Understood," came the Zerani response. "What about the human children?" "Acceptable casualties," the human voice replied without hesitation. "Primary objective takes precedence." Maya's hands clenched into fists as rage flowed through her like molten metal. Acceptable casualties. These were children, innocent teenagers whose only crime was attending the same school as a retired military operative, and someone was willing to write them off as acceptable casualties. Someone was about to learn why the ghost of Terra had become the stuff of nightmares. Maya made her way to the school's main office, where she could access the building's security systems and communication arrays. If Martinez wanted to play games with innocent lives, then Maya would remind her exactly what kind of monster she'd created. The office was empty except for Mrs. Henderson, the guidance counselor, who was huddled beneath her desk with tears streaming down her face. She looked up in shock as Maya appeared like a specter in the doorway. "Maya? Oh, thank God you're alive. We need to find a way to call for help. There are soldiers in the building and they're not human." "Mrs. Henderson," Maya said gently, kneeling beside the terrified woman, "I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to end this, but first I need to use the school's communication system. Can you help me access the main console?" Mrs. Henderson nodded shakily and led Maya to the principal's office, where banks of monitors showed security feeds from throughout the school. Maya could see Zerani soldiers moving methodically through the corridors, while in the parking lot, human figures in military gear coordinated the operation. Maya activated the school's external communication array and began broadcasting on a frequency she knew would reach every military installation within 100 light years. Her message was simple, direct, and absolutely terrifying. "This is Maya Chen, operational designation Ghost of Terra." Her voice carried with the authority of someone who'd commanded star fleets and toppled governments. "Jefferson High School is under attack by Zerani extremists operating in coordination with human military personnel. I am declaring this institution to be under the protection of the Terran Special Operations Division, effective immediately." She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything, not just for her, but for every human in the galaxy. "Furthermore, I am resuming active operational status and invoking Emergency Protocol 7. Any hostile action against this facility or its occupants will be considered an act of war against the human race." Emergency Protocol 7 was a code that Maya had hoped never to use, a nuclear option that would bring the full might of human space forces to bear on any threat. But it also meant that Maya Chen, the retired teenager trying to live a normal life, was officially dead. Only the Ghost of Terra remained. Maya cut the transmission and turned to Mrs. Henderson, who was staring at her with a mixture of awe and terror. "Mrs. Henderson, I need you to go to the basement and wait with the other staff members. What's about to happen isn't suitable for civilian observers." "Maya, who are you really?" the counselor asked in a whisper. Maya's smile was sad and infinitely weary. "I'm the reason humanity survived the galactic war, Mrs. Henderson, and I'm the reason those children upstairs are going to live through this day." She left the office and began making her way back toward her classroom, but now she moved with different purpose. The scared teenager who'd been hiding from her past was gone. In her place walked the Ghost of Terra, and she had work to do. The Zerani soldiers never saw her coming. Maya moved through the school like a force of nature, her captured equipment allowing her to strike from impossible angles with lethal precision. She didn't kill them, not yet. Instead, she disabled their communications, sabotaged their equipment, and left them scattered and confused throughout the building. When she reached the classroom where her fellow students were hiding, Maya found them exactly where she'd left them, huddled behind the desk barriers with Mr. Kowalski trying to keep them calm. "Is everyone all right?" Maya asked, though her voice now carried the cold efficiency of a military commander. "Maya, we heard your announcement," Derek said, his voice filled with amazement. "Emergency Protocol 7, that's like declaring war, isn't it?" "It is declaring war," Maya confirmed, "which means help is coming. But first I have to deal with the people who thought it would be acceptable to threaten you." She moved to the windows again, studying the deployment of human forces in the parking lot. Through her enhanced optics, she could see Colonel Martinez herself, standing beside a command vehicle with the arrogant confidence of someone who believed she held all the advantages. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. "Mr. Kowalski," Maya said, without turning away from the window. "In approximately 10 minutes, human naval forces are going to arrive in this system. When they do, I want you to take the students to the main gymnasium and wait for extraction. Can you do that?" "What about you?" Sarah asked. Though she already knew the answer when Maya looked at her classmates one final time, memorizing their faces. These children who'd bullied her and ignored her and never suspected that they were sitting next to one of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. They were brave kids, braver than they knew, and they deserved to live normal lives free from the shadows of galactic warfare. "I have an appointment with an old friend," Maya said simply. And with that, the ghost of Terra stepped out of the window and into legend. When Colonel Martinez heard the news that Maya Chen had resumed active operational status, she would realize too late that some weapons could never truly be controlled, only temporarily contained. And when the children of Jefferson High School told their story in the years to come, they would speak of the quiet girl who sat in the back of the class, who never talked to anyone, and who had once held the fate of the galaxy in her trembling hands. Some of them would even remember that her name was Maya Chen, though most would know her only as the Ghost of Terra, the legend who had saved them all.